Hey everybody, thank you for watching. Today I'm going to be going over my meta opinions on the current Cyberlimbs in Off the Grid. I made this tier list here in Tier Maker if you want to use it for your own opinions on the meta Cyberlimbs. It will be available down the road for future updates. The tiers I made are meta, great, balanced, bad, and trash. We have all 19 current Cyberlimbs in the game. Alright, let's go ahead and get into it. We have some nerfs recently. We had a big nerf on the Trip Mine limb, a big nerf on the Bounce Bomber, that might have been an update pass, but that's still recent. A big nerf on the Ripper. We had a huge buff for the Javelina, a decent buff for the Maxi Gun, and a really big buff for the Kinetic Shield. With those in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and put the Javelina up in meta tier. You may not have used this for a while, but it is a height damage output machine. You can lock on up to 3 people and do 250 damage if your missiles hit per person. That's the equivalent damage of a Ripper now after the recent nerf. So this is insane. I'm expecting it to get a nerf in the future, but as of right now, this Javelina is meta. Another arm we're gonna do is the Paralyzer. This is also gonna go up in meta. You may not be using this recently, but with the recent changes to the other limbs, the Paralyzer is gonna be much stronger, being able to see people with their health bars accurately because of the recent fixes to it. And then also, if you have your dart and you hit someone, they are completely paralyzed for 1 to 2 seconds. With the recent nerfs to the Bounce Bomber, the Paralyzer is the new Cyberlimb you want to use to almost incapacitate your enemies. Alright, with our last limb in the meta tier, we're going to be doing legs, and it's going to be Roadrunners. If you don't use Roadrunners, you really should. Anytime you're in a building, Leapers are useless. Roadrunners are the best legs to be able to get out of any situation, because if you're outside, you can use them to sprint, slide cancel to a zipline. Your team can run in your trail, so can enemies, so you have to be aware of that, but you can also use enemy trails. Roadrunners are the new meta. If you haven't used them, please try to use them. Alright, moving on to our great tier. I'm gonna do Recon, another limb that gives you insane amount of information close to the Paralyzer, but Recon lasts a little bit longer and it does show them on the radar for all your team, whereas the Paralyzer is just locally for you. Recon gives your whole team information. It's insanely powerful, and it recently got a couple fixes to where it wasn't highlighting enemies when it should have. Our next limb in the great tier is gonna be Ghost. Ghost recently got a couple fixes to it. It was a little buggy when you were popping plates. It was showing plates. When you had a laser on your gun, it was showing the laser. It was showing the laser out of a body that wasn't there, so it was obvious. Some people are able to see Ghost a little bit better just because the pixels are distorted. If you're on a lower settings or lower graphics quality, you may not be able to see Ghost as well. But Ghost is a very overpowered limb. It's really good for solo clutching. With the new upcoming solo mode, Ghost is going to be very strong. On to the next limb in great tier, we're going to do Phosphorus. Phosphorus did just get a slight nerf where it does bounce off of the Kinetic Shield. And recently, knocks are able to crawl faster and have an immunity time immediately upon knock. So what that means is if you knock someone with a phosphor dart, they are going to be able to crawl out of the fire radius a little bit faster if they are aware and know this. But I still believe the Phosphor Fury is an insanely powerful limb. It has literally unlimited range. Sure, it's a projectile, so it has that moment of, you know, traveling to your enemy. But if you use this as your long range and all your other weapons like a shotgun and like say an AR for close range, you can use your Phos Dart for long range and be able to get those snipes off when you wouldn't before. Going on to our next tier level. Balanced. First up, I'm going to put the Slam Fist. The Slam Fist gives you 2 things with it. It gives you mobility, and it gives you an ability to do damage and concuss your enemies with knockback. If you look in the sky and you cook it and use it, you will fly up in the air about 20 feet. This is enough to be able to get out of a sticky situation or rotate to next zone if you need to. It doesn't do a high amount of damage, but what it does do is concuss them, give them that red like wavy screen. It's really hard to fight and shoot enemies when you're in that screen, so it gives people a good advantage, but I'd say it's an overall balanced limb. Our next limb in the balanced section is going to be Trip Mines. After the recent update, Trip Mines no longer stick to enemies, and they also have a half a second delay before explosion. So when it leaves your arm and it hits whatever surface it's sticking to, it now has a half-second delay before it can explode. You can no longer stick enemies, so you just can't run around flying in the air sticking people free like that. But I believe that this is a huge balance update to the trip mines, actually what they're supposed to be used for, you know, holding off zip lines, using them in a hallway, barricading doors, etc. Trip mines, it's a great limb here in the balanced tier. Next limb we have in our balanced tier is going to be hookshot. Hookshot recently got a buff of the projectile size, and when you think projectile size, hookshot doesn't shoot anything. It does. It shoots its hook, and what that means by doubling the projectile size is if you're looking up in the air and you try to stick a street light or a tree, it's going to be a little bit easier to hit this street light or the tree now, a little bit forgiving, and hit the edge of the bark or hit the edge of the street light, and you'll still be able to grapple. If you're good on runners and you're using a hookshot for vertical mobility, if you're not comfortable with grabbing zip lines and using the map like that, the hookshot is great for that. Our next limb we're going to have in the balanced tier is the Ripper. Now you're thinking, why is the Ripper so far down in this tier list? Well, recently we did just get a nerf for the Ripper. The nerf took its damage from 350 down to 250. And 250 is just enough damage to not fully crack armor, but get you one bullet away from being cracked. It also got the nerf to not be able to chop off legs and knock someone immediately if you chop off their legs. There was a bug where that was happening. So overall, the Ripper is in a pretty good area. If you have someone who really is just amazing at movement, they're still going to be hitting you with that Ripper and then smacking you with maybe one shotgun shot and you're going to be dead. But I think the nerf recently really put it down the tiers, maybe in balance, maybe in great. I'm going to go ahead and say in balance personally. All right, our next limb is a little questionable since it is so new to the game. It's going to be the maxi gun, and it did just go from 27 damage per bullet to 40 damage per bullet. And the overheat recently got reduced from 100 bullets to 200 bullets needed. You can shoot 200 bullets at 40 damage per bullet if you're hitting. Also, the spread size got reduced, so this gun is either going to be in great or balanced. I'm gonna go ahead and say balanced for now. Until I use it more, I wouldn't say great, but point blank, the maxi gun can do insane amount of damage. Our last cyber limb we have in our balanced tier is going to be the bounce bomber. So it did recently get a big nerf, like I was saying. It went from being this non-stoppable power suction black hole force of Dragon Ball Z Kamehameha Spirit Bomb type shit, where it would pull you in and people were shooting trip mines, which also pulled in the trip mine, which exploded, which caused a mini nuke on you. The huge nerf recently, we are able to say that the bounce bomber is still usable, but I would say it's more in the balanced area unless you have that insane player who's just spamming it at the right time, really hitting right on and nailing you. If you've been enjoying this video so far and you haven't liked or subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and like and subscribe. I put a lot of work into this video getting it out after quite a few people asked me for Cyberlimb rankings. Thank you so much for taking the time to click on it. Alright, let's get back to the tier list. Alright, I did forget a limb right here. We're gonna go ahead and grab the Leapers. These do belong in the great tier, however I don't believe they belong in the meta tier. They're good for the beginner user, I would say, but if you get stuck in the way of using Leapers only, when you're in a building you can't use your legs, when you're in certain other situations you're out of Leapers, you're pretty much useless. Runners are definitely the better over Leapers. I say Leapers might end up in the balanced tier here soon, but as of right now they're still in the great tier. So for our last Cyberlimb in the balanced tier, we're putting in the Hammerheads. The Hammerheads aren't terrible. I would say they're definitely balanced. So you can cancel the jump and use it as a flying animation, kind of like Leapers, or you can use the jump animation as a slam fist effect. If you slam down on an enemy, it will do damage. It will give them that red, shaky, wavy screen of concussion. So with that being said, they're definitely good in the balanced tier. We want these Cyberlimbs to be balanced. Remember, sure, there are some that are going to be a tiny bit better, but meta isn't really what you want as the average player. All right, for our bad tier, we are going to be putting the Skunk Paw. So the Skunk Paw can be utilized well. If you don't have any other limb, it's definitely a limb you should be using. It's a gas grenade essentially. Wherever you launch it, it can't be shot straight like the phosphor dart. It has a little arc to it. Skunk Paw is useful in like blocking off an area or giving yourself cover because enemies can't see through it necessarily. However, whenever you are in it, yours or teammates or enemy Skunk Paws, you will be taking damage, and once again your team will be taking damage if you accidentally Skunk Paw them. Our last limb for the bad tier is going to be Buzzkilla. Buzzkilla is a drone you send out to shoot enemies. It is helpful if someone's ghosted nearby. It will shoot them and make them pop out a ghost while they are being hit. But other than that, I don't really find Buzzkilla that useful anymore. I did forget another limb here once again. We have the Kinetic Shield. The Kinetic Shield did get a buff like I specified at the beginning of this video. It recently is able to block Phosphor Darts fully. It's also able to block Rippers. That's why Ripper did get moved down into the balanced tier, another reason. But as a solo item, the Kinetic Shield is strong, and with the recent buffs, I'm going to be putting it in the great tier if you really know how to use it. If you aren't comfortable with it, it's definitely in the balanced tier. Kinetic Shield is essentially a riot shield you hold up on your arm. It absorbs incoming bullet damage and can be deflected back at enemies. If your teammate also shoots at your Kinetic Shield, you can deflect it back at an enemy. When you're using a Kinetic Shield, your feet can be shot, but it is a very good weapon right now, especially if you're in a closed area like a hallway or a building and you have enemies shooting at you, or if you only have enemies shooting at you from one angle, you can definitely use that. It's not really big enough for your team to cover behind, I would say. Alright, on to the trash tier. So for the trash tier, we have Slugger. Slugger shoots like an oil slick type effect where it traps enemies slowly. They can move, but it's like, you know, you're running in quicksand. If you see someone in it, it's just the easiest kill. However, when they are in it, they're gonna have nothing left to do but shoot back at you, so don't just aim duel them. Make sure you take cover and take a smart angle to get them while they're in it. If you're in Slugger, you can use your runners to run out. If you're in Slugger, you can use your leapers, your hammerheads to get out. That's why I think it's in the trash tier, because it really just doesn't have any significance. The one thing about Slugger is if you shoot a Foss on it, it will catch on fire. That's extremely powerful end game, or if you're really trying to get someone out from behind cover, using that to block it off and catch it on fire. It's a really rare occurrence that you're going to have the opportunity to do that, but when it does happen, it catches you so off guard that you're just running in fire because the fire is there for about 30 seconds. For our last Cyberlimb, we're putting in the trash tier. It's going to be Thumpers. Thumpers are mortars in this game. When you use your Thumpers, you are essentially crouched down looking at an iPad. You're just the freest target to get killed. When you have it open, you're using essentially an iPad, and you have 3 targets you're allowed to select within your triangle area that you see on the screen. And once you select those 3 areas, you're going to shoot mortars down. It's going to take about 5 seconds for those mortars to hit. There's going to be red smoke for like 2 seconds before the missiles touch or so. Your team will take damage, you will take damage, and enemies will take damage in it. I have gotten full squad wipes with these. But you're not using Thumpers unless you have absolutely nothing else. Maybe it's end game and you have your full loadout kit and you see Thumpers on the ground and you're safe where you are and there's no roof above you, and you use those Thumpers to get a squad wipe or to push someone off height. That's a great use for them, but other than that, there's no time that I'm using Thumpers unless you want to be that weirdo in the pregame lobby spamming people on height. I guess you could do that. I have killed myself multiple times by using Thumpers near a car, or not even like a roof above me, but like a barricade next to me, and like it shoots over your back out the back of your caps, and somehow it hit that and exploded on me. So you got to really just be out in the open when you use these. All right, everybody, and that concludes the Cyberlimb ranking tier list video. If you do want to make your own, it is available here on Tier Maker. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it so much. If you haven't liked or subscribed to the channel yet, please do. Have fun in Teardrop, and I'll see you in the next one.